Christian Medical and Dental Association of Nigeria, Student Arm, presents the maiden edition of online conferences. Prayer and Missions Conference 2020 with the theme, Arrows in His Quiver. 3 platforms, 16 speakers, delegates from all across Nigeria and overseas. It was a life-changing experience for many. Brace up as you listen to power-packed messages and parallel sessions on issues pertaining to Christian Medic. God bless you as you listen. Let's welcome our speaker.
We're talking about Christian Medic in politics and in different spheres and societies. I've had some form of controversies about as regards the role of the believer in politics. And because of this, many believers tend to shy away from politics. When the slogan WWJD came on, what would Jesus do? It brought about a lot of questions, and people asked, would Jesus have been a politician if he were to be in a society like ours today? I trust the Lord that as we go on, God will help us to be able to look at the different areas and the different opportunities that the believer has as regards politics. And I'll be talking about this based on the following outline. I will just talk about politics generally. We'll look at the whole general perspective, and we'll look at historical perspectives, both biblical perspectives historically, and then we'll look at history of politics and the church, both the medieval times and up to the 21st century. And then quickly, we'll just talk about the preparation, what the Christian, who look at some questions that have been asked, which would help us talk about the challenges in politics, which makes it a bit tough for the Christian. And the question that would answer, I will quickly talk about my own personal experience. By God's grace, I have served in the Nigerian Medical Association as the Assistant Secretary of Nigerian Medical Association FCT chapter. By virtue of the introduction, if we look at Romans chapter 1, verse 17, chapter 13, 1 to 7, it says a lot about governing authorities and how we relate with the authorities that we have. I want to say that at this point that Ken Leach had noted and said that all Christians are political. That is his quote. He said, whether they realize it or not, but especially when they don't realize it. Ken Leach is a vicar who started a movement on homelessness and a charity. And he said this and has always maintained that all Christians are political, because if you look at what Jesus Christ came to earth to do, Acts 10:38 says that how God's doing good, healing all manner that were oppressed of the devil, for God was with him. It is of note that Jesus Christ came to make life easier for the common man. And if we note the stories of Jesus Christ from the beginning to the end of the gospel, we see Jesus as somebody who was always interacting with the poor, always interacting with those of the lower society to help get them what they needed to get, because in those days the politicians were not so interested. And then we're looking at certain terms which we need to put in perspective to help us come to a point. But before we get to that point, the key points which we must take home from Romans 13, 1 to 7. One is that all authorities are established by God. The idea that politics is a dirty thing should be abolished from our heart. It should be disabused from our heart. True, maybe the process that people take or what people do to get to the positions where they are politically. All Christians, every authority is established by God, and because God establishes this authority, it is something we all must do to ensure that we are going on with this leadership and politics. Number two thing is that leadership is there to maintain law and order. Leadership is there to maintain law and order. So leadership will maintain law and order. And if we must have a sane society, then it means that people who are sane, people who have the capacity to help in the maintenance of law and order. One other point which we must get is that the government collect. As a matter of fact, today in our country, one of the challenges which we find in our society today, corruption, where we see so many people talking about looting, actually looting, and it's from every point in the government of the country, subset of leadership, which is corruption. And in Romans 13, 1-7, it talks about that the authorities are God's servants and they are to pay taxes. So God puts them there for us to pay taxes so that they can manage what taxes are. If we begin to talk about the challenges, especially in our own country today, it is mind-blowing. Just a few days ago, we saw what even happened to a doctor, a medical doctor, a professor, who was asked to give accounts of the monies that he has spent, from whether he fainted legitimately or whether it was in an act that they will have to prove themselves. But the thing is this: there are so many people who are there who shouldn't be there, who keep embezzling monies that should be used to help subset medicine. 81 point something billion was embezzled by a group of people. If you put that into the teaching hospitals, if you put that into 6 teaching hospitals in the 6 geopolitical zones, we all know as both medics what these things can change. If we invest that into the medical schools to improve the medical training, and it is quite challenging. I want to say that it is important because the challenges are so obvious, and Christian medics must take up this challenge to get into leadership. Because we know who a Christian is, and there's no doubt as to who a Christian is. A medic, I will just define who a medic is. A medic is a medical practitioner. A medic can be a medical student in the British parlance. Then the Americans also Christian medical practitioner, a Christian student, or a Christian paramedic in the armed forces. So it is important to note this. And we're looking at these people's role in politics. Then the question is, what is politics? Because the word politics seems to be somewhat ambiguous to so many people. And that is why people look at politics as being a dirty game. Politics is something that people shouldn't even get into, and the rest of it. Politics means the activities associated with the governance of a country or an area. Any activity that has to do with governance is called politics. That is why when it comes to the country, when it comes to so many people, when it comes to the process, and politics can also be an activity aimed at improving someone's status or power within an organization. Politics can also mean an activity that is aimed at improving someone's power or status within an organization. And if we keep at this help us to be able to move and to understand our role as Christian medics and what we need to do in politics. Then we need to look at the different biblical perspectives. There have been different roles. In the Old Testament, it is obvious that we have different kings. At a time, God was the one who was giving the people direction as to what to do. A time came, the people, the children of Israel, said they wanted a king. That was when somewhat politicking started. They wanted a king, somebody who would be like a ruler to them from every, like other governments and other countries and other peoples. And in the Old Testament, people who participated in politics, I will just mention, because of our time, just 3 people. One was Nehemiah. Nehemiah was somebody who was the king wine cupbearer. And in those days, the cupbearer is a political position where the king gets somebody he trusts, a trusted person by the king, who first of all tastes the wine of the wine to the taste of the king. 2, in those days, that the king could not be poisoned. So Nehemiah was always at the king's palace because Nehemiah was a politician. So it came to a point when Nehemiah needed to go back, excuse me, when Nehemiah needed to go back to rebuild the walls, the king noted his countenance. He showed that Nehemiah was a politician and the king. He was somebody who was a happy man around the king. Another example is a popular story we know about Esther. Esther was a young lady who was queen in a kingdom that almost half of the world. And if we look at, even in our country, Nigeria, we know how powerful the wife of the president can be. If people want to get to the president, they need to get this world. Those positions are not contested. They are not elective positions, but they are positions where people have influence in government. Another person in the Old Testament is Daniel. All right, so Daniel was someone who was said to have been at a place of authority of government for more than 60 years. He was relevant to every government. And in the book of Daniel, we saw that so clearly. In the New Testament, we didn't see people, the believers or the elite, the believers talk about politics, but we noted that Jesus Christ was thought to be the Messiah by the Jews. They felt it was somebody who was going to help them come out of the bondage and the oppression of the Romans. So Jesus Christ was looked at a political figure. In the New Testament, that was why they said that a Messiah would not come from a humble beginning. If you look at the early church and politics, it started from in AD 70 when Emperor Nero accused the believers of being the ones that destroyed Rome, and he really punished them, persecuted them seriously until Constantine gave his life to Christ. And Constantine allowed the church to be free, and that was when the church and the state was one. That continued until the Byzantine era, down to the Roman Catholic Church, where even the popes of those days had powers over the different states. They were more like the kings. The kings of the different countries were paying taxes to the popes. The popes were more like the head of the church, until Martin Luther came off the Protestants started. Martin Luther came off the Catholic Church in the 20th and politics. People have been getting into politics in so many ways. The church has a lot of people. In Nigeria, for instance, we see that the vice president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is a pastor of a church. I'm sure he would have continued pastoring if not for the fact that maybe the demands of maybe being a vice president may be so obvious, and to maybe so overwhelming to him. So it is. I want to talk about a story that is quite lovely, and it is a recent thing that happened. Said to his members that he was going to resign from being the general secretary of the Church Assemblies of God Church in Malawi, that God had called him into politics. It was absurd. This was a man who all of his young age, his youthful age, he spent it in the church as a pastor. He left it and got into politics. 7 years down the line, in April 2020, this man won the election, and today he is the president of Malawi. So what is the role of the Christian medic? You know, we are looked at in society as one people who are very, very cerebral. For most of us, even though people say a lot about medicine, this one, this, that, medicine is still the one of the course that still has the highest concentration of the elite. When I talk about elite now, academic elite in every class in different secondary school, the brightest brains in every class in different secondary school find themselves reading medicine. Somehow, in every school that offers medicine, medicine has a very high cutoff point. And for you to hit that in JAM, a lot of very, very intelligent young men and women find themselves in medicine. But unfortunately, we don't find this translation back into politics. And we find out that so many doctors a bit are naive about politics. And we find people, when we look at SUGs, the student union government in university, let's start from that. We realize that the student union government of different universities are run more by law students. And I want to say at this point that there are different levels to politicking. One is from the national, the one you have partisan politics, have APC or PDP or whatever party that it is. We have state, we have local government politics, and we have associations. Associations can be whether cooperative associations, can be the medical association, like professional association bodies, like the one we belong to. For the doctors, Nigerian Medical Association, or for the students, the NINSA, the Nigerian Student Medical Association. And there are other groups that people can belong to. And whatever the association that you choose to politics, a lot of things are eluding us. For instance, every decision that is made about medicine, about healthcare in Nigeria is dictated by the politicians. I want to thank God that currently that doctors are getting brazen up, and doctors are getting into politics. In the Senate, the chairman Senate Committee on Health is a medical doctor, and in the House of Representatives, we have Dr. Tanko Sununu, who is a past NMA National Secretary General, and he's the chairman House Committee on Clinical Services. These ones, they are consultants and they know what is needed. Before now, when doctors were not getting into politics, we go to this point and we see now we have more people from other health sectors who other parts of the health sector who are into politics. And when they do things and that affect against us, even though that we are the head of the health care delivery system. The doctor is the head of the healthcare delivery system, but we have not been able to match that with what in us first, because we need to start seeing people who will get into politics to get things to be done. It is not an easy thing to do, but you must be prepared. And if people have done it, if people who are not as smart as we are, if you permit me to say that, who don't have the kind of intellect, the kind of perseverance, the kind of integrity, especially for those of us who are Christians, the integrity that we have and that resilience that we have, people who don't have it are there and they're just trading. I've been privileged to be in politics, and I work with people in different caucuses. When you go for this country, because believe believers are not there. And if the Christian medic does not think about what to do, starting from where we have the NIMSA. How many Christian medical students are ESCO members, executive members in NIMSA? We tend to spiritualize it, but it is a spiritual thing because God intends us to be those that will also lead leadership. Because if you remember, I said that Romans 13, 1-7, God established leadership. Leadership is there to maintain law and order and to handle matters in every area. As people are embezzling funds and Christians are there, we pay dues. Our dues are used to do all sorts of atrocities. And because we don't participate, we just say, okay, let us just keep ourselves in church. To some, he made prophets. To some, he made apostles. To some, he made teachers. To some, he made evangelists. Allow me to add, in Romans chapter 12, he said to some, he made administrators. And what more can a Christian medic do or be if he's not an administrator not in fellowship now, an administrator in the secular world? These are avenues that we can expect. People were shying away from a responsibility of saying what is true. And I was reading scriptures, and that part in Esther, that a time like this, that is why God needs believers. Because if we don't get involved, people who should defend, people who should help, people who should help support. Jesus Christ went about doing good. People who should have done good for would have ended up losing that for these people. Number two, you need to know what entails in getting into a position. For instance, many of us don't even attend meetings. You are a medical student, you don't attend your medical association meetings. How will you be a part of them? Right? We were called to the world. We're not called just to the church. We're called to reach out to the world. So you must participate in whatever association is. You must participate. Many of us just stand aside. For the how many of the NMA events did you attend or do you attend? Most times the criteria for leaders in this area is usually attendance of meetings, and many of us will just stay away. Number three, you should be able to gather a critical mass of people who are like-minded like you, and you begin to engage them. Let them see. And you must follow the requirements that you need to get into position. For instance, in NMA, it takes 2 years to prepare to get into a position. In the medical association, I'm sure it usually takes 1 year because the change even in that, it takes about 1 year. So who says that we cannot be leaders in this area? Because God has called us to those leadership. We must participate in election. Sometimes believers don't bother. They say, oh, it does not concern me. That election is this, that politics is dirty. It is because we allowed unbelievers, those who are not accepted Christ, those who are not allowed God to rule their lives, who have allowed them to run politics. That is why politics is said to be dirty. When believers get into politics, it will be arranged. We look at America as a country and we wonder, why does America run the way it runs, like a system that works? It is because it is founded by the principles of scriptures. The people that founded the United States of America were believers. That is why America, they write on their currency, in God we trust. And as much as possible, they try to still follow those basic spiritual principles up to today. I must dare say that your basic tool as a Christian medic in politics is integrity. And new leaders. And integrity has been the watchword. People are looking for that chairman, that secretary, that president, that assistant president or vice president, that treasurer, that will do and represent the people properly, not people who we want to go ahead to do what they want to do. For the want of time, I want to look at certain challenges in politics. Number one, in the political realm, is it possible? Yes, it is, because it has happened in several places. It is still happening in different places. There are so many countries now in the world where the believers are, where the leaders are believers. I just give an example of the country Malawi. Malawi is a country where there are believers who are in power. So when a believer is in power, it is easy scriptural that can truly make Jesus be Lord. True. Christians have a right to let their consciences override the majority view of their constituents. There are so many things that are challenging to the believers. For instance, you go to political meetings and people are trying to, in politics, majority carries the vote. That is why you still have to come to the point of critical mass. When people see that you have integrity, it is easy for them to follow you. Most times, especially medics, we can influence people either in enemy and in different parts of the world when they see our influence and they see what we can do. Another problem Christians can find is that how can Christian partisans run for office without compromising the unity of the church? It happened in Nigeria. What would you say if you are a pastor of a church or you are a Christian and there is this thing of partisan things? You are a Christian medic in fellowship, and somebody in the fellowship is supporting somebody else. All these things, they are ways that politics can be run. There are ways politics can be run which will help still hold the unity of both the church and even the fellowship as it were. And then, should Christian politicians seek to legislate morality? Yes, I will say, because at the end of the day, what people want is to see inevitable compromises world. The answer is no. It does not require inevitable compromises. And I'm going to give an example of my own life. I've been into politics in Nigeria Medical Association since 2012. And when we go for certain political meetings and so, you see people come up and they do all sorts. Sometimes you go for net meetings, conferences, people can be randy, they are loose in their morals. But I've not gotten myself involved. For instance, I don't take alcohol in any form. And a lot of them do take it. And at some point, it becomes a challenge of, oh, this one, and all these things. And many of them go out there and do all sorts of exchanges. People do embezzle money. Let me just be clear about it and be frank. You go out there and people embezzle money. Monies that are meant for some other things, the dues that people pay, people don't channel those monies to what they should use them for. But by his mercies, because I stood my ground and because I've maintained my own stand right from the beginning, I stand with Christ. I don't mingle with anything that has to do with evil. So compromise is not something that is easy to come around, because my stand is already from the outset. They know me as a believer. They know my stand. They know the principles that I live by. So political involvement does not require inevitable compromises as we think. People tend to buy votes. As we speak, I'm running for an office. I'm politicking, campaigning for an office. Some of my opponents are already using monies to buy votes. Some are already using monies to look at this and to do all sorts. And they do mudslinging. They try to talk about people's character, try to lie, put false accusations and falsehood is put out there just to have political advantage. People tell you that it's politics, but it is not true. You can go into politics and win an election without compromising. Is it worth it? Is politics really worth it? My answer is yes, yes, and yes. It is Christians in government that keep the government accountable. When I served as assistant secretary, around me, I ensured that everything that happened around me was something that was what we were asked and called to do. So we are there to keep accountability. The Bible says that we are the salt of the earth. We are the ones that keep this place running. If believers leave saltiness, we will lose, the earth will collapse. So as Christian medics in politics, we are there to keep government, whether the government, when I mean government now, at any level, accountable. We bring transcendent values. We're the ones who make people see that there can be values. We help people to see the truth and of value in human lives. In government today, it is because of the power of Christians in government. That is why that the things that we ordinarily would have been fighting against in legislation, for instance, abortion. If we don't have Christian medics in politics, and we just say no problem, when we are faced with the challenges of transgender, we're faced with this challenge now. And if we don't hold on to our values, if we as believers, we don't move, if we as believers, we don't go into politics, these things will be forced on us. I'm a plastic surgeon, and if there's any area of surgery that will do sex reassignment, it will be plastic surgeons. And in plastic surgery, we'll be forced. Somebody will come to do this. We'll be forced to do these things. That is why we need Christians to be in politics, so that we can bring these values. Christians will provide a restraining influence. We are the salt of the earth. People do meetings, and they do meetings in the wee of the night so that they can do all sorts in NMA politics, even in ARD, in NIMSA. If you have attended any NIMSA NEC meeting or conference, when the main decisions are to be taken, decisions that are of importance, they keep dragging it into the wee of the night. I went for a caucus meeting in Zaria sometime in February. A meeting that was supposed to start at 7 p.m. didn't start until 11 p.m. We were there doing meeting until 5 a.m. If you are not there and you stand, you lose out. And these are things that we must participate so that we can do it. And I must say, if it is worth it, yes, it is worth it. If you can see, that is my poster. I'm running for the position of Secretary, NMA, Federal Capital Territory. I've given some examples, but it is a political journey. I've been engaging people day to day, making calls, running around, going to hospitals, convincing people about what I can possibly do and what I can do. I have a manifesto, which if you look at the picture on your right, you see some things about my manifesto. And I'm a believer. I've not lost any touch with God. Not so. Because you can stand firm in politics. My political journey has been awesome, because God has called me and has sent me there to represent both him there, to represent even myself and the church. I must ensure that there are transcendent values that must be done. I was NMA secretary, I'm assistant secretary 2016 to 2018. I've been on several committees working, and people know. And as it stands, by his mercies, I'm trusting God that I'm going to get into that office. And when I get to the office, I'm going to show more dependability and more character, which people today in politics lack. And these things we see in brethren, we see in Christians. It is not any big deal for a Christian to be truthful, because it is the life of Christ in us. It is not anything for a Christian to have integrity, because it is the life of Christ in us. I think I want to stop there so that if we have questions, people can ask their questions.
Thank you very much, sir, for the section. It was a very, very wonderful and inspiring section. So please, we can ask our question as we have heard from our speaker, so that we can end this section. If you have any questions, if you can ask through your audio, if you want to ask through the message box, you can just bring it up so that you attend to them. Okay, I can see Oluwafemi Durojaye's hands up.
Yes,
You can ask your question.
yes. I want to ask that now. You mentioned, thank you very much, Dr. Samuel Okpechi. You
Yeah.
mentioned some particular committees that you are on and that you've been on a number of committees and activities that you are doing. So, for me, these activities seem many. In doing it to the best quality and then getting all those things well done. So, how do you get to do it, sir? Thank you, sir.
All right, and thank you, Oluwafemi, for your question. The committees that I work in, they are I'm not on so many committees at a time. They are from the experience from 2012 since I started politics, so to speak. So I take one committee per time. Like currently, I am the continuing medical education committee in at the FCT level, and also continuing medical education national level. And this means there's the time that the secretaries have to do wrong clinics. I have my family to do. I have church to attend. I have also other things to do with myself. So I don't carry all the committees at the same time. So for instance, by God's grace, when I become secretary of NMA FCT, that will be my primary work. Most other committees will not. I don't pile all of them together at the same time. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much. You answered it.
Any other person with any other person with question, so that we can run up this section. Okay. There's a message. There's a message on the chat box.
Yeah, I can see the message.
Okay, so
It says that, sir, you mentioned SUG politics is usually run by law faculty. This is true, but I believe medical students do enter because of the stress of combining it with the academics. Plus, SUG is very stressful. How does one combine them? Yeah, I agree with you as a medical student because of especially within the short period of time you have at the preclinical level. Who have been SUG presidents and they did not fail their second MB exam that qualifies them to go for clinicals. The thing is, if you are going to do all that, like I said, you must gather a critical mass of like minds, people who will help you run the stuff. Because law students are the ones who do that a lot. They are able to combine law degree is also not as easy as people look at it. So they're able to combine it. So if you are called to go to SUG, usually if you have a group of people who are critical minded, who are the same mindset, not necessarily all medical students, they can be from different faculties. Why not? You can be the head and the leader who will go into it and do it. But if you also need to know your own capacity. For me, as a medical student, most of what I did were about fellowship. So it was not politics. So it was more fellowship, Christian fellowships, So if you need to know yourself and know what capacity you have, but if God is calling you to it, it means God will give you the capacity to be able to do it. You should be able to combine it very well without anything.
So I have a question. Can I ask?
Please do.
Okay, so I want to ask a question on the person that spoke on SUG politics. I noticed that as medical students, there are so many of us who have this urge to go into politics, but at the end of the day, we discover that financially that we are not stable. We can't do what it takes to get into those positions financially. How do we go about this situation, sir?
Okay, you see, the truth is, at the end of the day, it still boils down to the same thing of getting a critical mind, a critical mass of people. Okay, for instance, I am running for an office now, and if I tell you that in the last 2 weeks, I've spent more than 20,000 naira on calls. But you see, have I used my money to make those buy credit for those calls? No. People who support me, people who are like-minded, they just send credit. Oh, I know you are making calls. Use this one to do this. In school for medical students, you may not need to necessarily have to make calls a lot. There are a lot of cheap means of getting people know you can do one-on-one. But you see, by the time you have a critical mass of people, it is easier when if you have, for instance, friends that are 30, or you have medical students who are there, and they are you have same mindset. And once you have this in your mind, and you have these people around you. Imagine that you have 30 medical students who are around you and you're supporting your bid to be something in SUG, and they all give you 1,000 naira each. That is 30,000 naira, which will go a long way to help you to be able to do whatever you need to do, print posters and all that. And those. Okay, for instance, my poster, somebody who printed the poster did it for me for free. I didn't pay a kobo. I'm a doctor. I can afford to pay for my poster, but I didn't pay. Somebody asked me, send me your pictures. I sent my pictures to him, and that is the poster you can just like that. So it is about getting people with like minds, and these like minds are the people that are going to propel you to move on. Like in America, people do fundraising in politics, for even Nigeria too. When Buhari them are coming on doing politics, you see people who know they will benefit from the regime, especially business people and all that, they tend to donate funds. So once you have integrity, which I will still insist on, that if you have integrity and you call people around you, your friends, those people that you have influence over, you call them and tell them, oh, look at what I'm thinking about, look at what I'm going to do, I want to do. My brother, most times funds are usually not the problem, because people will find ways to support you even when you don't have funds. I can see a question here that, sir, what advice do you have for beginners? In the process of when I talk about what is needed, preparation, I said a lot of things. And number one is that be sure that God is leading you. Not everyone can stand the stress. And when God leads you to politics, it gives you the strength to be able to stand. Some people don't know how to count, are not fluent. But even fluency is not part of the criteria for wanting to be a leader, or want to be in politics. There's so many politicians we have today in the country who can't even express themselves in basic English language, but they are politicians. Why? Because they made up their minds to go. The first advice I will give you is that first don't attend meetings. If we are truthful to ourselves, do you attend your medical student association meetings? Because you don't. And you see, sometimes your lecturers would think that you are. I can see somebody saying something about lecturers looking at you as being unserious. If you get into politics and you are still smashing in your academic work, no lecturer will look down on you. I want to give an example. As a medical student, at some point, I led not a strike, but I went to the provost and I told the provost our part of problems. And the provost felt like we're joking and we're jokers. But at the end of the day, by the time our needs were, and by the time we engaged him, at some point, we needed to do something like, not a threat, but telling me that, look, sir, if you don't do this thing for us, like you may force us, give us what we wanted. I'm not a proponent of people being unruly. I'm not a proponent of people being rude to their seniors or to people you engage with. There's this thing I like to say when I talk about politics. Kamax said something that it is better to jojo than to war. To jojo means it is better to engage with people than to fight. So just go on, one little step at a time. As we keep pushing, as we keep moving, God sees our faithfulness. God will elevate us and will grant us helpers, political helpers, not godfathers. People will bring you to the fore, and you will not need to bow to them to be able to do what you want to do. And God will help us. God bless you all in Jesus' name.
Thank you for listening. I hope you were blessed. For more information, you can log on to www.cmdanigeria.org.